Good evening. I'd like to call to order the April 8th, 2025 regular board meeting. I'd like to announce that the meetings of the Mechanicsburg Area School District Board of Directors are being recorded and live streamed for the purpose of transparency and increased public access. The live stream, along with recordings from previously held meetings, can be found on the school board's YouTube channel. This time we'll have a brief moment of silent meditation. Roll call. Swiger.
Yes. Mr. Bradley.
Here.
Mr. Frangel.
Here.
Mrs. Huff. Here. Mr. Kickline.
Here.
Dr. Lebo.
Here.
Miss Morgan.
Here.
Dr. Rhodes.
Present.
Mr. Sanker.
Here.
And Mr. Rowe.
Here. This time, if all would like to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Endorsement of agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda tonight?
There are no changes and it will stand as written.
Lastly, the reading of the meeting minutes of the regular board meeting of March 11th, 2025. Do any board members have any corrections of those meetings minutes? Seeing none, we'll have them filed as printed. Move on to item 2, hearing of visitors, items on the meeting agenda. There will be 2 opportunities for public comment this evening. As a reminder, public comment is limited to residents and taxpayers of the school district. At this time, we have reached the first opportunity for public comment. This opportunity is reserved for comments related to items that are listed on the evening's agenda for a vote. The second opportunity for public comment will occur at the end of the meeting. The second opportunity for public comment is reserved for comments on issues not listed on the agenda and not being voted upon. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per individual and requires community members to observe a reasonable decorum. If you'd like to address the board, please come up to the podium, share your name and the municipality in which you reside. This is for items that are on the agenda for tonight for a vote. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, reports and presentations. Item 4.01, Superintendents of Schools Report. Dr. Pitts.
Thank you, Mr. Rupp. We've got a few presentations tonight, the first 2 being with some of our students at different levels who are doing some amazing things for us. And the first group, we're going to go from youngest to oldest, and we'll start with our Northside crew, which is terrific to be able to have them share a little bit of what has been an ongoing series of presentations of board engagement, the opportunity for our schools, our administrators, staff, and students to be able to thank the board for the support that you all have provided for us with all kinds of different resources. And this is a chance for you to see some great things that are happening at Northside and see how they have brought to life what you've given to them. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Russo.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to be here this evening, and thank you for your flexibility. I was actually supposed to present in February, but due to some events, this was not able to make it. So I thank you for your flexibility this evening and allowing us to be here. So I brought with me tonight some I think they're pretty awesome. My teachers. I had Mrs. Kathy Shealy, Mrs. Laura Thuma, and Miss Caitlin Bigham. They're here tonight to help present and talk about Northside Elementary and something that we call Genius Hour. And so what I like to do is on the next slide, in August, way back in August, I presented this little statistic to our teachers and talked about creativity, curiosity, and it stemmed from the book, When You're Wondering, You're Learning, Life Stories of Fred Rogers. And so I challenged our staff and said, how can we make sure that when kids come to school, they're not coming because they have to, they're coming because they want to, and they love to learn. And that was the challenge I kind of set out before our staff. And one of the things I said was I wanted to make sure that our kids just found a passion for what they do. And I think that statistic just speaks a lot to just, it's amazing. 98% apparently are considered creative geniuses at 5 years old. Yet here I am, I'm nowhere near that. So I think it's humbling to see, how we transform ourselves. And so, but tonight we're going to present that to you and into a little bit more detail. And again, just the book itself, and then the word curiosity. So every year I give myself a word that I try to strive to do and strive to inspire other people to do. So my word this year was curiosity. And, a strong desire to know or learn something. I will say from my own personal experiences, I've learned a lot from our students and our staff this year, but I also probably learned more about other things that I didn't need to know about, but I've learned them. And so definitely curiosity. And so that being said, I'm going to turn it over to our teachers and their students to talk to you tonight all about Genius Hour.
Thank you for letting us come to show you the excitement that kids have about being excited about their passions of learning through the curiosities. So we're going to talk just real briefly about what Genius Hour is.
So Genius Hour is one of our favorite parts of the day. And this is a time in our curriculum in ELA where the kiddos really get to take charge of their learning. They are the lead learners and we are there to support them, ask them how we can help build their dreams to life. And they get to apply what they have learned to these awesome projects. So they really dive into what are they interested in? What are they curious about? What do you wonder about? Which is a lot for second graders and it's so fun. And then they take all of that interest and questions and wonderings and they start learning, how do we research? If we have something we want to learn about, what do we do next? What are those next steps? How do we learn about taking facts from different sources? And then they start going through this process of gathering their research and then finally sharing what they've learned and creating something to show. It's a really exciting time. It's a busy time. Come see our rooms during Genius Hour.
It's not a quiet time.
No.
It's a completely self-directed learning time.
Yeah.
It's very exciting. So the steps are, they first start with a question, a wondering that they have. And once they get their question, they start researching. And with their research, it comes in all different shapes and sizes, from books to PebbleGo apps that we have, some video learning that they can do. They gather all of their information and they draft it and they edit and revise. And once the writing part is done, then they create with the intention of showing others what they learned to be able to teach the answer to their curiosity. And then we brought with us some of their published pieces as well as their creations that they wanted to share with you.
One of the coolest things that we found about Genius Hour is it gives, not only every kid has a chance to do something that excites them, but it gives them a chance to kind of work through the learning process in different ways. So as they're creating their creation, they may feel like, oh, I thought this was going to work, but it's not going to work. And it gives them a chance to adjust their thinking and kind of get all of those creativity and all of those different learning opportunities that don't come quite as naturally in the classroom. And it gives them a chance to really show what they love, which is awesome.
It's fun. You have it. Yeah, that was sneaky. We'd like to introduce the students and they're going to talk very briefly about what the different parts of the process are. So
This is Jad.
So my project is about a jellyfish.
And this is Rylan.
So mine was about a golden retriever.
Next up is Thomas.
My project was about the heroes and the solitude.
And Hayden.
My project is about televisions. And it's about digestive system.
That was Jackson.
And then Miss Hannah on the end.
About
All right, so Jackson, you're up first. What were you wondering about when you started? What were you thinking about?
I was thinking about the digestive system, so I thought it would be a good fact for me to do. Because my mom, she's a nurse, and she's always wanted me to be a nurse or a doctor. So I did something that doctors and nurses both do.
That's really cool. Your second grade wondering was, what happens to food when you eat it? And so that brought him to the digestive system, and he learned about all the different parts of the digestive system. Nice job.
The second part is for Mr. Jad. So Jad, how did you start researching about jellyfish?
So I started researching about jellyfish because I always wondered about them.
What sources did you use?
So I used PepperGo and everything.
Why is it important that we use sources?
It's important so you can give credit to the author.
And then next up is Mr. Thomas. So Thomas, after we found all of those facts about your topic, what did you do next?
So we drafted them into a sentence, and then we edited and find the mistakes that we made in our draft.
What kind of things were you looking for when you edited?
Punctuation, capital letters, spelling.
You can see some pictures of just the kiddos working through this process. So next is Rylan. Tell us about the publishing stage.
So basically first you have to write down the draft, and then you have to do really neat handwriting on this paper right here. Because if you didn't do that neat handwriting, they probably couldn't be able to read it. If they couldn't be able to read it, you couldn't really teach them anything, and you want to teach them something.
She worked really hard on that teacher handwriting. Check it out.
The slide of some of the kids this year working on different creations. So once they learn, putting their learning into action and being able to share. So Hayden, how did you come up with your project idea?
I was looking at pictures and I thought it would be cool to make this.
And what you've actually made two that go together. So what two creations did you make?
I made an old telephone and a new.
So you compared and contrasted the way technology and tablets have changed over time. That's great. What materials did you use to make these?
Paint, cardboard, and hot glue and string.
Good job. Thank you. This is some pictures from last year's share day that we had. Our share day is coming up, you'll see in a little bit, but these are some creations they've done over the years. And, all of our students are looking forward to this year's special day. So this goes to anybody that wants to answer. Ready? What lessons did you learn when you were working on your project?
To never give up, always keep trying.
That's a good one.
Did you get your jellyfish done the first time we tried it? No. How many times do you think it took?
It took a lot because I wanted to make it big.
You kept coming up with different ideas. How do we do this? And we just say, well, what do you think? What could you try? How do you make his head 3D? Shoved a paper bag up there and used rubber bands. Just kept trying. All of a sudden it came to life, right?
Did anything turn out differently than you expected? Because first you made a plan of what you wanted to do for your creation, and then they kind of changed over time. So does anybody want to speak to what changed, what was different than you expected?
So I thought that it would be easy to make a fish because because you just had it to add a thing, but I knew it was hard because I don't really know all of the parts on the fish.
So you probably had to research that too, right? How about this one? What was your favorite part of Genius Hour?
My favorite part about it was to create the jellyfish.
It's pretty amazing. Rylan, how about you? What was your
Um,
favorite part?
My favorite part was writing it down, but because I really liked learning about it. My favorite facts.
That was fun for you, getting to learn it. Hayden?
I like
Jackson?
I liked creating it, and I liked adding more details every time.
Yeah, he kept saying, I'm done. I said, are you sure? Can you make it a little bit better? He goes, I'll make it better. So, yeah, you know, good job. How about you?
I like
Well, we're super proud of you. You've done amazing things. We're so proud.
A lot of them are on their second projects too. So they're diving into number 2.
So our last question is gonna go to Miss Hannah down there on the end. Miss Hannah, what are you most excited about for our Genius Hour Share Day?
Absolutely. And I think what you'll see through all the pictures you saw, the one thing that resonated with me when we actually got those pictures in place, every time you saw a student working, there was a big smile on their face. They are excited about this process and they're excited to learn. And so we thank you for your time this evening. We wanted to make this short, just so, because everyone has some better stuff to do, I'm sure. But I will say this, we'd love to have you come north side, May 9th at 1 o'clock. You'll be receiving a formal invitation tomorrow via email from us. But 1 to 2, all these students and many more will be showing off their Genius Hour projects. And I can tell you the gym at Northside will be filled with just amazing things. So if you get the opportunity, please stop by Northside May 9th, 1 to 2, and we'd love to have you join us. Thank you for this evening. We appreciate your time.
I wanted to know how you pick your subject. How did you pick your topic?
Great question.
I picked it because I really wanted a dog, and I really wanted a golden retriever. But so I just started researching about them.
Maybe you'll get brownie points for presenting tonight.
Where are your parents? They should stand up. Dog, yeah, okay.
Thanks,
But I think it's really amazing because each one of them, what they chose, what they love to do. I could see you guys in 20 years from now doing exactly what you're saying, because you said you like to write yours. So I can see you growing up to be a writer. And the ones of you that wanted to be a creative person, I can see that. I mean, you could do set designs over there with your little box. And, you know, we have a future doctor there. So, I mean, I just think every one of you, you've chosen what you like so right now in your life, but I think you're going to grow with that. So it was amazing to see you all do something different.
I'm impressed by how your teachers, I think, are geniuses also, because you brought the curriculum, which I can hear when I hear editing and publishing, and they know what editing means specifically and the resources that they need to check. I know that's the curriculum written down of what we need to have kids understand, and be able to do, but do it in a way, getting kids to be able to do it in a way that they enjoy and love and will retain. I feel like that's what you've accomplished here, and that's the true goal. So congratulations to that.
It's the vision coming to life in a time.
Perfect. Yeah.
Question, where do you store all your projects?
Not come down the hallways. There's no fire hazards.
Cardboard boxes. It's all very organized, but we collect recycling for a long time.
Right.
They bring stuff in, things that are trash that we clean up and we say, how can you use an empty tissue box? But then they start doing it at home. What can you create out of your recycling materials? So it's all recycled materials. It's fun.
In all seriousness also, and I can't say whether Northside specifically does this or not, but many of the buildings use the open classroom spaces too, that the board obviously supported as we refurbished the buildings. Those open classroom spaces, sometimes you might walk through and say, "Oh, happens in these spaces. Well, this is the kind of thing that there's room to spread out and be able to lead things.
I love to see that they're so proud of what they've done. And you should be. You've done a lot of hard work.
We see the digestive system there. I just didn't notice it.
Tell them what the bread, show them how that works.
Show Dr. Rhodes here.
Yeah.
How's that work?
Some of this.
Bro, put over it. And so I'm gonna try to teach them about it. So it's like a mini game that you do. So like you have to guess a part where like the person that's learning about it or comes up to see it, they pick one and then they guess what it is and then they like flip it over and then see if they got it right or didn't.
Awesome.
Somehow I thought they were all gonna make me take the test.
Is that Norse mythology or is that Greek mythology? And Olympus and Poseidon, is that what you know? Look at you. That's what I teach.
So the girl with the phone, have you ever used another phone besides the cell phone?
He didn't tell them who invented the telephone.
Excellent.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
We're going to go to the other end of the district spectrum, and we know there's great things happening in the classrooms. We know there's lots of great things happening outside of our classrooms as well, and the activities that our students get involved in beyond the classroom are so important to us. So once again, we are excited to be able to celebrate some of our student athletes, this time our winter sport athletes who were able to make state competition. And once again, we've got a number of different groups to celebrate. So as soon as Mr. Pahanic makes his way through.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah, we've got a couple teams here this time around, and I'll try not to steal his thunder here, but we have a couple teams, and then we've got a couple of individuals representing some other teams also. And once again, he may mention this, but we continue to be in a situation where we have teams competing against teams that we typically wouldn't have competed with in the past. And we've got a couple examples here tonight of some teams that, despite moving up into a higher bracket, a higher division or class, really continue to represent us so well at the district and state level. So it's over to Mr. Van.
Thanks for having us back. Hopefully you're not getting sick of seeing us. It's an exciting day for us to be here. We're gonna have two individuals that we recognize and then two teams that we'll recognize. So the first individual we'll recognize is Darren Ginter. Mr. Ginter is a swimmer for our program. Yeah, just stay right here, buddy. Darren's rewritten the record books in our old pool at Northern, and then unfortunately won't be able to do it in our new pool as he's moving on to swim at Bloomsburg. But he qualified for the 50 and the 100 free where he swam at Bucknell. And I'll let Coach Blumack speak on Darren's career. It has been quite remarkable, really. Coach Blumack.
All right. First of all, I'd like to thank you folks for getting us a brand new auditorium, which we actually got to jump in on Wednesday. So high school kids are still smiling, so we're able to get in. Darren's been on the team, was on the team for 4 years, one of my captains for 2. Phenomenal kid. He's also a coach for the MSC, the club team. Kids love him, especially the young 5, 6, 7-year-olds that are clinging on Darren every time he shows up to coach. Yeah, just an outstanding leader. All of my kids looked up to Darren. I have kids coming to me now saying that, you know, I want to be able to break Darren's 50 free record or 100 free record, which has really motivated the entire team. So it's wonderful, to have a swimmer, to have a student like him. It's a rarity when they come along, right? You know it as a coach, and I've had a lot of great kids, a lot of great swimmers, but he's, taken it to the top. His brother was at States 2 years ago, so we were standing here with Lance. So it's something that runs in the family. He's going on to Bloomsburg. I don't know if you mentioned that. And we'll be swimming at Bloomsburg University. So looking forward to following his career there. So.
Great Congratulations, best of luck, next 4 years.
Thank you.
Was he the very first person to jump into the
So-
pool? I heard.
He was one of the 12. I'll be honest, he was patient. We have a video and I watched Darren specifically because I thought he's pretty quick. He let everybody else jump in first, so.
Good sign of a leader.
Next, we're gonna have Lexi Pankos. Lexi is a member of our girls wrestling program. She had quite the season. She's a freshman for us. She wrestled at 106 and won the sectional at Mechanicsburg. She then went to Penn Manor and won the District 3 championship in dominating fashion, and then ended up finishing 5th at the Giant Center at the state tournament. Coach Ecker, do you want to say a couple words about Lexi?
Hi, guys. How are you guys doing? No, just an incredible young lady. I think most of the people that come up here today, you're going to hear a lot of the same things. And, great student, great young leader, just so mentally strong. Of all the sports I coach, football, guys wrestling, girls wrestling. I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and say she's probably the most mentally strong of all of them. I can tell you that hands down. And, she battled with injury this year and just incredible. So you're going to be seeing a lot more of her, I think so. So great kid and a great wrestler.
Because she medaled at the tournament, she will go on the all-state banner in the gym. So another accolade for her.
What does she do with her hair?
Well, wait till.
Yeah, she actually
You get these questions.
she should ask her. She braids it and
I'm just asking, did she have brothers or anything that she learned at a young age?
I don't think she did. I'd have to ask her, but no, none that came through.
Yeah,
The next group is girls basketball. Girls basketball has been a staple here over the past few years. They are really one of our premier programs. They went through the regular season undefeated this year, which we believe is the first time in school history. With that, they won the Keystone Division Championship, moving on to districts where they won 2 games in districts, which qualified them for the PIAA 6A tournament. Dr. Bitts talked a little bit about moving up in classifications. This was one of the groups that moved up from 5A to 6A, and they certainly represented us well in that by doing so. I'll let Coach McAllister introduce the girls and say a few words.
Our 2 seniors with me tonight, Veronica Vaught, Kenny Klinger. Part of the reason why we're been very successful is we have really good kids and awesome seniors, great leaders, good students, just good kids. So thank you for all your support.
Where are you going next? They're both seniors.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm doing hack for 2 years. I plan to transfer to a 4-year university or 2-year university. I'm going to Westchester to major.
And I have Danny in AP US history right now, and she's hanging in there and doing a good job. You get to see me in a little different light. But good kids, so proud of both of them.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. The last group is boys basketball, another staple here over the last few years. So much that this is figured out a stat there, first time in 20 years that we've had a group that reached the PIAA tournament 3 years in a row, which this group has done. Also Keystone Division champions this year and qualified for the 6A tournament through districts. I'll let Coach Gaffney introduce the group and say a few words.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. I know you guys have a busy schedule this time of year, and we just appreciate everything that that you do for us and not just the boys basketball, but the athletic programs in general. Same to Seth as well. I know my son has coached in a couple different districts and I feel bad sharing stories with him about what I get at Mechanicsburg in terms of support from Seth. And it's not to downgrade the other athletic directors at the other schools, but the things that he does with going with the extra mile and things like that are really appreciated on a coaching standpoint. And then we pass that down to players. So Coach Ferlizzi is here tonight, one of our assistant coaches who is countlessly available for the guys in any way, shape, or form, and has been a nice addition to our staff over the last 2 years. And then we have 2 fantastic seniors, Josh and Landon. I'm just going to let them talk to you about the season a little bit and things that they enjoyed, hopefully with their experience here, not just this year, but over their careers here at Mechanicsburg. And again, just thanks to you guys for letting us come and feel special and be recognized for our accomplishments in front of you. It's a great honor to do that. So guys, do you want to share some memories, good, bad, indifferent, on your careers?
This year we did something a little bit different. Coach Gaffey took us up to Elmira, New York for a weekend over Christmas break. And we were just coming off a Hershey loss. So that was kind of like a down part of the season because we felt like we needed to win the Keystone outright, like go perfect. Coach Gaffey just said like, we need to regroup. And I feel like after we went up to Elmira, we played the best basketball of the season up there. We ended up making it to the championship. We lost the night of the championship, but we ended up beating the New York State championship, who was Binghamton. And I don't know, I feel like that rerouted our whole season after we went up to New York. I mean, it kind of like created a culture and just set like a group and a stepping stone that we had for the season.
First off, I want to thank you guys for letting us be here. And I second that. New York was really fun. Definitely playing in the championship up there against the state champions. It also was a good bonding experience for us as teammates because we had, 3 seniors graduate from last year? Yeah, 3 seniors graduate that were big parts of our district championship run, which was also fun. I'll get to that in a little bit. But it was a good bonding experience for all of us to be in the hotel together and just enjoy time with each other off our phones because, you know, how us teenagers are with their phones. But, and then the district championship run, our junior year was really special, really fun. And it was probably, he said our best basketball played was in New York, but I feel like it was definitely the district championship run. It was fun. We had a lot of fun with each other. And then the 2 prior years for me, freshman and sophomore year, I got to play with Dr. Rhodes' son, Lucas. That was fun, of course. And those memories, they stick with me for a while. And those guys taught me a lot. And so just my time here was really fun, short-lived, I would say. And it was short, really a little too short in my opinion. But yeah, the memories were good. And the atmosphere that everyone created for us was amazing playing games.
So 2 stories and then we'll leave you. First, these 2 donated their time and came and coached our 8th grade team in the tournament at Steel High a couple weekends ago. And it was just great to see them interact with the kids because the kids had come to the games, watched them play, and now they were echoing things that we tried to instill in the players. And in a humorous way, kind of relaxed way, it was coming to the players, but yet they were receiving it through these guys, which I thought was kind of special, kind of neat. And then the trip to New York, thanks to Seth for letting us do that because we have a Christmas tournament here that's been a tradition. And I just wanted the guys to have a chance to play in a national environment because we had some guys who wanted to play in college. And sure enough, Josh chose football, but that night when we played Binghamton, King Rice, the coach of Monmouth, was there to see the star player for the other team. And Josh was the best player on the court that night. So it was just something we wanted to do for the guys in that regard as well to get them some exposure and some visibility. So we played a team from Staten Island, New York. We played a team from Binghamton, New York, and then Calvert Hall, which is a traditional power from Maryland. And then finally, I was in the van with Aiden Pinsker, Chance, Andrew Simpkins, and Owen Whitmer. And teenagers and their cell phones for 3 hours on the way to Elmira. Not one guy pulled out their cell phones. And we talked about everything. Cooking, Chance brought up, what would we do if the van got broken down nowhere? And then forgetting that he had his cell phone with him, he said, well, we would walk to the nearest town and then call for help. So all these things while I'm driving, I'm like, I'm getting paid to do this. Well, I'm just, enjoying the conversation. So thanks for letting us do that. I think you guys had a good time and hope you guys have a good rest of your night.
Certainly a team effort, but I'm remiss not to let you know that Josh Smith is our all-time leading scorer now in basketball history. Just under 1,800 points. He'll be going up on the banner as well. Wow. Any questions or anything else? All right, guys. Well, appreciate you. Dr. Lebo.
Just a comment. I don't know if you saw it, but there was an article in Penn Live today. I talked to Coach Gaffey. Chris Franklin was just named the coach of Globetrotters. And he apparently had played for Coach Gaffey, and he said how he learned from him that he had to have his grades in good place to be able to play, and how that has stuck with him. And I think that just kind of reinforces what we talk here about the way extracurriculars really feed into the academic program as well.
All right, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you again in a few more weeks. I'm sure. No pressure. No pressure. All right, one more presentation from me. This one doesn't involve kids. It's a tough act to follow here, Mrs. Bott, Mr. Bingham. So, special education cyclical monitoring. We had something to go on.
Right up there with Gene Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. So every few years, and I'll probably steal a couple moments of their thunder here, but every few years we go through a cyclical monitoring process with the state. And this was our year to go through that as a district, and certainly our whole special education department is a part of making that happen. And we thought it was important just to come back and be able to share with the board how that monitoring visit went and some of the outcomes of that. So I'll turn things over to them.
So, in the past, Dr. Lay talked about signals and evidence, and Dr. Vitz has continued on with regard to how do we know that what we do makes an impact on our systems and on our students. And, special education is a very expensive resource allocation that we have annually within a budget. I know that Mr. Longwell breaks that apart with part of the board presentation, or the presentations to the board regarding the budget and the costs of special education. But just wanted to provide some evidence and of the reflection that occurs in the program overview of special education services here in the district. And that's how we look at the audit. There are a lot of districts, and Jamie can attest to this and probably will, that fear an audit when it comes to the door. We look at it as a way to positively inform the system with regard to the signaling of whether or not we are doing things appropriately from a program standpoint, from a student standpoint, and from an overall service delivery standpoint. Utilizing every taxpayer dollar to the maximum benefit possible and not being wasteful, and looking at how we can revise the programs based upon that information. And looking at the data that the Pennsylvania Department of Education and the Bureau of Special Education provided to us after the audit. Very impressed with the work that Mrs. Bott and Mr. Miller, as leaders of our special education team, have brought to the district with regarding our overall program, and the supports that Mrs. Christy Beals and Rebecca Marshall are as coordinators of special education bring. And those are resources that are allocated directly by the board. So the results that you're going to hear about tonight from Mrs. Bott didn't occur by accident. It occurred by deliberate planning and the allocation of resources that the board provides, which is why I thought it was imperative for us to come back to the board to provide you with the update on how well Mechanicsburg Area School District did in our cyclical monitoring.
So
Thank you for having me here tonight to talk a little bit about this. I'll bring you into my world for just a little bit. This is actually the second full monitoring that I've been able to work through. My first year as supervisor, we were in our corrective action year. So the year prior, they had gone through a monitoring. So I worked on that corrective action. And then every 6 years, we go through a monitoring. So this is the second monitoring that I've been through, and the second time afforded a different look and an ability to make it more as a professional development tool, and really looking at those signals as opposed to such a daunting task. When you go through it the first time, it's a lot. So the purpose of cyclical monitoring is to ensure that we're compliant with state and federal laws for special education. And it is as direct and specific as that. Are we compliant? We had our on-site monitoring the week of November 4th. There's a lot of preparation that goes into what you turn in prior to them coming on site. So a lot of components happened in August and September and October as well. But we actually had our state monitors on site on the 4th. And that monitoring team is made up of a PDE representative, but then it's also a team of peers. So other individuals in similar positions as mine come in and look through our information. So peers, and then also people from the state.
Have you
It is-
been a monitor
I
in
have.
other districts? I'm sorry, I was gonna.
That's okay. I have not. I have been able to help a lot of our consortium members who are new to their positions understand the audit model, a lot of that for them, and provide them just input and tips and tricks. But I have not sat on a peer modeling or peer monitoring and actually looked through anybody's documents. So
Is it like escaping jury duty or something like that, maybe? You don't have to answer that, I guess. Yeah.
I'll admit that we're pretty selfish in securing and keeping our resources in the district so that they are not pulled away for non-essential state assigned tasks. Because we want to make sure that they're here to support the needs of our programs and services. But if we were asked and Mrs. Bott would be wanting to do it, I would not hold her back.
what I will say is, if you do not have a close-knit group like a consortium that can support you, it is really probably the best way to understand what goes into a monitoring is to sit on one of those committees. But I'm very fortunate to have a consortium of supervisors and individuals that I grew up knowing, and they taught me all the things. And now I can pass on that information to others. So I have not served in that way, but it is a way to really understand this very in depth. This process. So really there are 4 major components of a monitoring. The first is parent, staff, and student surveys. The second is a facilitated self-assessment. It's an FSA where, and I'll get more into that, but it's 23 overall components that they look at that adhere directly to federal and state guidelines for special education. And there's a lot of questions under each, and you need to provide a lot of evidence policy to show that we are following those. We are also given 10 names of students who've been in our district for at least 3 years, and we are required to look through their paperwork for the last 3 years as a district and talk about whether or not students received educational benefit. So with their IEPs, we are going through and looking at those individualized plans and saying, did this student make progress based on how we set up their goals and the accommodations and supports that we provided them? And there is a list of 10 questions that we go through very specifically and look at that. And then we also have our on-site file review where they send us a list of another 10 names, and they get here and you hand them 10 files and they look through those files, and you'll see our results on how we fared through that piece as well. So the survey findings, we leveraged some natural staff time to be able to receive a lot of feedback. So on our records review day at the start of this school year, we posted the survey, and within records review day, we had our staff fill it out so that we had a concentrated time for them to be able to answer questions. And then we provide the survey links to all of our case managers in the district to send out to parents. And we received a lot of feedback, which is really, really important. So we had really good participation on our surveys, and overall our comments were very positive. As we reviewed all of our information, these surveys, good, bad, ugly, and different, gives us a really good idea of ways to shape and enhance our programs. Again, as Mr. Bigham said, treating this as to grow and get better is the way that, we continue to monitor what we're doing and making sure we're providing best practice strategies and things for our students. So we have reviewed all pieces of our feedback and we do get those. But overall, we had a lot of really good feedback, a lot of really positive comments and support. And in those areas that may have had some feedback to help us grow, they were very student specific, very individualized. And so we were able to take those and respond to them as they come. Yes.
So done this before, right? And the last time we did this, we likely had similar results of pretty positive feedback. And how do they compare? And I guess the other question maybe is like, did we move the goalposts this time anyway? So maybe it's unfair to compare because we improved the
Sure.
program over the 4-year period. So
I full transparency, I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. And I provided the survey links more generally through emails and not as a concentrated effort. I did not have near the feedback. So I very intentionally set up the staff surveys in a time when I knew that I would have them all together. We kind of broke the system. Not everybody got to respond to the survey because we had too many people respond, which is a good thing. My learning from last to this one is catch that concentrated time. So we were having parents fill it out at the end of IEP meetings if they were able to stay. So thinking about just how we cast that net. One of the hard things about this survey is that it is written in very state language. So the language aligns very much to what the statutes say. And there are a lot of our staff and families who don't quite know all the jargon because it's jargon. I mean, it's very heavy jargon. So anytime that we could capitalize on that and be there to answer questions and things like that, we're getting better results. So I don't know if it's a fair comparison to answer your direct question because I feel like I got more feedback this time than I got the last time.
seems a good result.
Yeah. Sure. The facilitated self-assessment, and it's small print, but you can get an idea of some of the areas that were looked at. They are, again, categories that are aligned to federal and state requirements. And I think, in that spirit of last to this monitoring, one of the pieces that I took away on the last one is let's create procedures and protocols that go along with all of these pieces so we don't have questions about that. And that's something that we have grown on from last monitoring to this one. As a result of that, there are 23 overall components. We were found compliant in 19 of those 23 overall components. For example, one area where we were found non-compliant was one that you all helped me with, and it's already taken care of. We brought forward the independent educational evaluation policy in December was the final reading. We had to update some wording on there. So that is an area that was found non-compliant, but because of our procedures and protocols, it is now found compliant. So that is one thing checked off my list, done. I don't have to worry about that. One of the other areas that was found non-compliant at the time that we were monitored was participation in the Keystones at the high school. But since that time, updated data has shown that we are absolutely compliant. So that one has also been closed. So at this point, there are only 2 of these areas that I need to provide correction on. And to be specific, they are parent trainings, which we have also done this school year, and I just need to submit. And then the final one is least restrictive environment, looking at our students who are in those private provider placements and how can we bring them back closer to a school-based setting, which is something we're always looking to do, just based on student need.
And financial benefit.
Yes, always, yes.
So just to expand upon that, because I saw some, as I was reading the room, as Mrs. Blatt was talking about that, the Bureau of Special Education was monitoring our participation in LRE based upon 2022 data, correct?
Our
And-
data does lag
Right.
behind. So based on when we report. Very typically, it is 2 years behind what we're actually reporting. So when numbers come in that get closer to the date where it's provided, a lot of times we are. It's interesting on that least restrictive environment one. We were under the state average in percentage, but we didn't hit the target percentage. So therefore we're in a couple hundredths of a percentage from where we need to be. So we're okay. But it is always a really good thing to look at our procedures, what measures we use to determine whether students need to be in an intensive placement and what measures we're using to bring those kids back into a lesser restrictive placement. So again, in that spirit of let's use this as a learning tool, let's tighten up those pieces. Okay, we didn't hit the target, that's okay. Let's figure out how to make sure that we have tight processes. And whether it's myself or Mr. Miller or somebody else on our leadership team that's looking at how, to best program for a student, let's make sure we're talking the same language. Let's make sure we're doing those pieces. So again, it's that spirit of, let's make sure we're tight. We're doing this well.
The parent training piece is that helping to train parents.
Yes, or one that we did for an example is with assistive technology. So we have students who use devices as their primary mode of communication. That is something that, we've trained staff on. So if the student is in a classroom, they know how to use that device. But it would be a mistake of us to believe that the parents know how to use that device as well. And if that's their mode of communication, it's a really good idea for us to bring them in and sit them with some speech pathologists and say, let us show you, let us model this for you and explain how this carries over at home. Because really, if that device goes home and sits on a charger, they don't have language at home, right? So those types of things are things that we bring families in for. Another example would be the disability fair that just happened on March 22nd at the middle school. That partnership, being able to bring all those resources together for families to come in and engage and get resources is another way that we bring families in and train them.
I ask you a question though? You were talking about the least restrictive environment, but we actually were out of compliance with the one that's above it, the independent education evaluation.
Yep, that was the policy one. The least restrictive environment one hits about 6 different components. So there were a lot of the areas that we were compliant on. We did fall under the target range. It was just that one very specific piece.
And if the board remembers, the change to the policy was minimal. It's 113.5, and it was the inclusion of the notice of recommended educational placement and in the policy as far as the language that our special education advisor insisted needed to be in the policy, not required by PSBA or recommended by PSBA to be included in the policy. But they opted to mark us as non-compliant until we added it to the policy. So we remedied that back in December of 2024.
The belief is clarity for families. So we said that we would provide notice through a notice of recommended education placement is clarity. And it does help families, especially because this world is jargon filled. So let's be really clear and be upfront and transparent on that. So that was the update.
Why does our data lag?
Based on when we reported to the state. So our reporting dates are December 1st and June. I keep saying January, June 30th. So the state gets that information and then they have to synthesize it. And so they provide us with the year that we're supposed to look at. I have more real numbers, but that doesn't always matter. When I provide, so under each of these, I think the shortest one is like 8 questions, where you have to provide an analysis, and then many of them you might have to provide like individualized education plans to go along with it, or you may have to provide board policies, anything that you can count as evidence that would show what you're doing under each of these components. So a lot of times in my analysis, I'm adding more updated data. Especially if it's something where it didn't look great in one year, but I know it's better the next. I make sure to make a note of that when I'm filling out the information.
So is it a question of our data lagging, or is it data lagging?
It's the state's
No,
data.
okay, yeah.
So when the 2023 data was released from the state, our special education advisor saw that we met that criteria under LRE. So because, or Keystone participation. So because we met the criteria under Keystone in 2023, it was removed as a corrective action because the data was more current and no longer applicable, and we met the criteria because we knew that we needed to improve that area based upon the annual special education report card that's published from the state that projects an evaluation of the data, but is not specific to the fact that it's summative data for us to be able to use as evidence. So it's a state lag in publishing of data that led to the initial non-compliance. But once that information was updated and reviewed by our special education advisor, it was removed as an area for us to be non-compliant. It's another way of wording all of what Mrs. Black reported.
For that educational benefit review, that's where they give us 10 names of students who've been in the district for at least 3 years, and we go through and we look at all of those, plans to make sure that students were making progress. We were found in compliance on all of those plans. So all 10 of those documents, and they're pulled at random, I didn't pick them, showed that students did make educational benefit from the programming that we provided. This is a really cool activity to do as a professional development. So I was able to take all of the special education teachers on staff for one of our very first professional development days. And I used the morning, I put them in groups of 10 and assigned them a student that they had not worked with. So they couldn't be one of the teachers that had worked with them over the last 3 years because I didn't want them to see their work. And obviously there's a little bit of they're looking at peer work. And so very clear guidelines are set. I want you to look for educational benefit based on the questions. And this needs to be a learning opportunity because these documents need to tell a story. And so we need to be reflective on that story and make sure that when we're writing these documents, our documents are telling a story, because at any point in time, we can look at any of these for the same type of information. So we went through, I had them go through. I didn't double check their work. This wasn't something where I was trying to get them or I was trying to not find any out of compliance. If we would have been out of compliance, that's fine. But we were not. We were in compliance on all of them. And a lot of the takeaways, the feedback that staff were saying was, I liked how I saw this person explain this piece. I need to use that. Or this was very unclear. And I'm thinking about how I write that in documents and how can I make that clearer? And things like, we talked a lot about this at the meeting table, but I don't know that I captured that in the document. So when the people fade away, is the story written? Which really gets us to best practice and what we want to see in documents. So this was powerful for staff to see and understand better how that paperwork tells a story and really helps us build a strong program for our students.
Sounds like something, it's a great exercise knowing the state's coming, but it's also like one of those things like, why don't we do this for every student at the end of every year all the time, sort of thing.
Right. And so we kind of do. So for every student, every 3 years, depending on your disability category, every 3 or every 2 years, there's a required reevaluation report. So that's where we should be doing educational benefit review. The regs allow you to waive those reports. They allow you to say, programming's good, we don't waive them. So every 3 years, we do this and look through all the documents. As staff changes and grows and things like that, that idea of why we do this and how to make it really meaningful has to come back into play. So this is an opportunity to say, okay, remember why this is really meaningful. Remember why, not because it's an audit, but because this is how we do our best work for kids. So we do those reevaluations every 2 or 3 years. But this is an opportunity for us to bring it back and say, here you go. And to add to that, after lunch on that day, I did have my school psychologist come present on reevaluation reports and how to consolidate all information through those reevaluation reports. So we were able to tie that to some of those paperwork pieces and what those reports look like in best practice. So we really capitalized on that day for student learning or teacher learning. So our on-site file review, this is where they pull 10 names, they give them to you about 10 days before they show up, and you need to have them there. And this is where the peer review comes in. So they look through these, and there's a lot of pieces that they look through for each of our students. They look through at least a whole reevaluation cycle. So they'll go from an evaluation through each of the IEPs through an RR. So what we found is that out of all of those documents that they looked for, we only had 9 errors in those documents. So we had 976 in compliance components, and they found 9 errors. So those 9 errors we do need to correct, and we do need to show them updated information. But I was pretty excited with my staff for for what they did there.
And just to reiterate, these files were pulled by the state. Students were selected by the state through a random. We have to provide them with a list of students, and they have a process of making that selection. So we have really no control over who the case manager is, what level it is, what the disability category is, and you know, the complexity of some of our IEPs for our most severe students, and the amount of pages that are included in a single IEP can go anywhere from 45 pages to 118, 120 pages or more in some cases for a single IEP, depending upon the severity and need of a student. To only have 9 errors in a random draw like that is phenomenal.
So can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
It appears absolutely phenomenal, right? How phenomenal? Like what is, give us a little insight in terms of like an average school.
So-
Like, I know it's got.
So they set up
This is
number
your
3.
opportunity to pat yourself on the back right now.
They set up number 3. They had a school district that had no errors. It was a very, very small district, and about 1 person did the IEPs. They had a district that was at, I think it was 4 or 5 errors. So I'm number 3 at 9. So other than that, there's usually.
Like a 6A district.
That's what I'm saying. You're not like, are we talking like there could be like 100?
That would not be unusual. I think that there are districts out there that I wouldn't say would have the inverse of that, because they would probably be under some type of a penalty or watch if they were. But 100, 200 errors, I don't think is outside the norm.
So statistically speaking, we're perfect.
I wouldn't say perfect, obviously.
No, it has to be.
We always have room to grow, Doctor.
It would have to be, but I'm just saying.
On
this
one end of the normal curve.
Yeah.
But to be near the top tier of error-free and to be number 3, I think it's a feather in the cap.
I would
of the
probably
district
say
who the work that's done.
statistically, we're perfect.
99%.
So I know you said you haven't been on one of these peer committees, but maybe some of the districts that have a lot higher number of being out of compliance, it might do them good to be on something like that because they can learn from you and steal ideas or, you know, see how it's meant to be. So, you know, I guess if we're nearly perfect, maybe you don't have to go look at other schools at the same time, but I'm sure there's always something to learn from being on that committee for
Well-
how another district's handling it.
Yes, and again, I think that that's the strength of consortium, you know, because we get a little bit of that look into and that group of people to say like, what are you doing with this? You know, like help me to see, give me a starting place. You know, I need to tighten up some procedure that we're using. What are you doing for that? So that's really, really helpful to be able to do those pieces. This is very much compliance to those state and federal guidelines. And I think the other thing that we try and teach is there is compliance, but there's also best practice. And so we try and extend it a little bit farther to, yes, we've checked all the boxes and we're doing those things really, really well. But how are we documenting the best practices and making sure that we are reasonably calculating these IEPs to make sure that we're making the growth that we want to make with these kids? So we are always training on that best practice and know that the compliance is very important, but if you're striving for best practice, you should hit compliance.
I think it's a good chance to also highlight your staff, because there isn't a single person in this room that Jamie and Mark included that reads every word of every one of our IEPs. The LEAs are all different, the case managers are all different. So only having 9 errors is truly a tribute to our special education teachers, and that doesn't take anything away
No.
from our leadership here,
This is
who
super
creates the environment for that, but the reality is that our police managers are rocking it.
They are. We have a really good team. And, you know, it's much to the appreciation of what we've been allowed to build. You know, all of you being in favor of special education and what we are able to build here, we are able to bring in top tier special educators that want to do this well. They're not trying to do it to get off their plate. They want to do this well. And so we have a really good department. I'm very biased, but I think we have a very strong department and, you know, I'm very appreciative of.
Apparently you're not biased. Apparently the state agrees with you. Should point that out. Yeah.
So where do we go next? We don't rest. We keep going. We do have our corrective action plans. You can see those up there. And as I spoke, between when I wrote this and now, 2 of those are knocked off the list. We've closed them out. And so we're going to continue to work on those. We will review the evidence for our 9 errors that we need to correct, and we have to show that paperwork. And we'll likely do a lot of that over the summer, just because that's the time that we can concentrate the time to be able to do that. But this is where we continue. So we can learn from 9 errors. We can learn from non-compliance. So we need to continue to train our staff. We need to continue to tighten up our procedures. You know, a department can't run because there's a person who is there who is saying this is how it should run. A good department can run because things are set in place for everybody to have access to that information. So we build good procedures and we make them available to our staff. And we train on those. And we continue to update our procedures and align to best practices. And that's where we won't rest. So between now and the next 6 years, I'm gonna want less than 9, but we'll see what we get. And, you know, in the meantime, we will continue to train on that best practice and keep moving forward for our kids. That's all I have for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would say that we've come a long way. I'm a product of special education. I'm severely dyslexic, and my reading class was go to the cafeteria and sit with the grandmother that volunteered and yell at it. She would yell at me every time I got a word wrong and read it slower, read again. We're not leaving. Come a long way from that, and that makes me proud. One of the reasons I'm sitting in this chair is because I think special education is so important. So.
That grandma's method kind of worked out though, you know?
I don't know if it was grandma's method or not my grandma, but it was somebody else's grandma, thank God. I'm not sure it did work out. I think it was more my brother and my mother's encouragement, but. Incredible job.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, that's all from our board.
Very good. 4.02 Capital Area Intermediate Unit, Mr. Bradley.
Yes, the intermediate unit board met on the 27th of March. A lot of different things that were covered. One of the things they gave us a little bit of insight into, we work on and develop one calendar for the school year. They have to merge as many as 9 calendars together, mostly because of the different districts that they work on and work with, and they have to coordinate their efforts. So there's a lot of effort going towards building that and putting it all together. There was an HR advisory coming up in May, professional development capabilities, information from PDE about emergency permits and certification. So there'll be a presentation from somebody from PDE that can actually walk through that information. I did talk about House Bill 265, and I think you're familiar with 265. So it's just something about benefits during the summertime, and whether that's going to be passed or not. It's just one of the many bills that are going on. From strategic planning and goals perspective for Keola, on a regular basis, they step back and take a look at Keola, the offerings and things that we do as far as Keola is concerned. They also talked about a lot of different things going on a STEM challenge design. They had 84 students from 21 different school groups together to do a STEM challenge. Math 24 is coming up, poetry competition. And then they're working on concept of thinking bigger, looking at the steel standards. Originally for fourth grade was the focus, and now they're starting to move to look at K through 2, as well as all the way up towards 8th grade level. They also talked about a windmill competition that they had. They had a bunch of, I think they were administrators together, and they had them just, how would you build a windmill? And they said it was supposed to be a simple, let's build a windmill, and it turned into, surprise there, a major competition between everybody on how to build the best windmill, the most, and they said it was very impressive, and these teachers and administrators were very focused on making sure that they had the best windmill created. And then.
I didn't win.
You didn't win? You didn't win. Well, you got the.
Well, we did use AI to try to help us figure out how to best shape the propellers. That's cool. Still didn't help us. No, we had fun doing it.
No, no, it's taking using the tools that you have available. We talked about that earlier, the resources and the research they had.
Absolutely.
And then the last couple of things that they talked about is they continue to work on literacy. One of the members of the IU was the PA literacy champion, as well as they are looking and working with the legislature. They went on legislature day as well. And one of the things that they're trying to get funding for again is more funding for the Imagination Library. And if you don't recall what that is, that was the organization that is put together by Dolly Parton. She was one of the key founders. And the intention is from birth until you get into school, a child would get a book every month. And the intention is to help, hopefully a child getting a book every month will increase their passion and desire to read and learn, and families get involved in the reading aspects of it and everything. So like everything else, lots of things that they're looking for funding for. This was one of the projects that was in place in the area, and then funding went dry, and then it just stopped. So they're looking to hopefully get some more funding back on it. But other than that, that's all my reports.
Questions for Mr. Bradley? Thank you for your report. 4.04 Wildcat Foundation report, Mrs. Huff. Oh, 4.03 Cumberland Perry Area Career and Technical Center report, Mr. Sanger. Thank you.
Thanks.
Almost did it.
I'll be brief. We'll move on from my report quickly. Don't worry. The Joint Operating Committee last met on March 24th. We traditionally don't hold a JOC meeting in March, but we needed to have a meeting so we could review and approve the bids for the expansion project. The bids we received ultimately were $400,000 less than the budget, so we approved them, and that's all good. There were several other grants that the CTC was awarded for safety upgrades, another one to match all the HVAC control between the old building and the new building, and some other grant funds from the state. So all to say that the total project costs are $23.5 million, but some of it is grant funded. And some of it also that funded through district contributions like Mechanicsburg, and then also a bond issue for the districts are participating in that. And so that leads to the next meeting on April 28th is where we plan to finalize the bond issue and get that out the door for those schools. So we'll have all the funding in place hopefully in a month or so. But biggest issue, we're now through the actual bid award for the renovation project, which means shovels should go into the ground this summer. And it's a multi-phase project, but I think we'll all be done in, I want to say 18 months, but I mean, we'll see. There's some, of course, we have the school year deadlines to make on things, but that's the main goal. So that's the big thing of the JOC.
So they'll work throughout the school year on program projects.
Yeah, the good news is like the building's an addition, so you can kind of work freestanding on a lot of it. There is work inside, you know, the JOC programs are like a puzzle piece or a whole puzzle when you look at the building overhead and to like move another program out, until you have space available to move something out, then you can renovate and move another program in. So some of those phases, like we are renovating the culinary space, which was like the culinary, there's a nice cafe and a nice kitchen, but the actual classroom is like a closet. So, you know, making that into a full-fledged classroom to accommodate more students, that part of the phasing will be a little bit more difficult to do.
Good. Any other questions for Mr. Sanger? Thank you. Now we'll move to 4.04 Wildcat Foundation report. Mrs. Hubbs.
Thank you. Last Friday, the board met. A few things to share are that registration for the 16th annual golf outing will open later this month. And the event is going to take place on August 8th at the Carlisle Barracks. So if anybody wants to play golf or be a sponsor, more than welcome to do it. The Foundation's Grant Committee is prepping its final decisions for grant funding for the 25-26 school year, and they'll be presented to the school board hopefully later this month. And the Foundation's scholarship application deadline is April 9th, with applications being accepted for the 5 scholarships it administers. The newest scholarship is the Janet B. Wentz English Award, honoring a former English teacher. And that is an annual $5,000 scholarship set up from a donation by Mrs. Wentz's son, Doug, to help honor her memory as an educator from 1965 until 1980. And the scholarship winners are announced at the Match Senior Awards ceremony.
The sponsorship for the golf, is that for like you sponsor a hole or?
No, well, you can do that. You can be a team sponsor, or which is a $250. I think it's $250 this year, a $200 sponsorship, and get your name on the team and sign. Places can go around. Or there are also sponsorships, like you can sponsor lunch, and a sponsor for that, and they get advertising throughout the event, depending upon the level of sponsorship.
And is there any way a person can attend if they don't golf? Is it like that?
Currently, there is not something
not
like
like
that,
you
but it
can't-
is something we're talking about. How
I
to-
know they talked about that in the past. I didn't
Yeah,
know.
they're still talking about how to try to potentially include more family members that maybe aren't golfers involved. You can always come and volunteer though, for less than 5 years.
I'll be looking for a cat.
Does volunteer? Oh, there you go.
Any other questions for Mrs. Hubb? Thank you for the report. 4.05 PSBA legislative report. No formal report. Mr. Longo, do you have anything on any budget issues or anything that legislatively you would want to?
Continue to monitor the state level. Dr. Betts and I, getting feedback from our colleagues to see what's happening regionally, but also monitoring from all the key organizations, PSBA and PASA and PASBO. It always is a little disjointed in that the schools are always approving their budgets before the state is, and so we'll just continue to monitor as we move into June.
I would also add, not on the funding side of things, but PSBA and PASA, the Superintendent Center, but primarily PSBA, PASA. We're doing a great job of continuing to update us related to other federal changes. So questions about the Department of Education, questions about executive orders, between those two organizations and the solicitor, we've been getting some really good guidance and feedback on how to continue to navigate uncertain waters.
Very good. Any other legislative issues anybody would like to bring up?
Do you think that anything that you guys are monitoring, nothing has changed so far from your presentations at the last couple of meetings?
Yeah.
Or vote tonight?
I wouldn't see any changes. I think we always try to strike that perfect balance, best balance, if you will. And the challenge always being the state is always so slow to adopt a budget that if you wait on the state, it'll trip us out of compliance with our own timelines. So we feel comfortable with where we've kind of drawn that line in the sand, and so comfortable with recommendation.
Item 4.06 Finance Facilities Committee report, Mr. Sanger.
Yes. No Finance and Facilities Committee meeting, but at the March 25th work session, we reviewed two items of voting agenda tonight: approval of the masonry repairs at the middle school and approval of the replacement playground equipment at the Sharmanstown building. Right next to Mr. Hoffman for that good presentation, Mr. Longwell. But just noting that we reviewed those items previously.
Very good, thank you. And the board president report, I'd like an announcement of an executive session held on March 25th, 2025 at 6 p.m. to discuss personnel and legal matters. Announcement of an executive session held this evening at 6 p.m. to discuss personnel matters. And I'd also like to announce that a few weeks ago, Dr. Bitts and I attended the Shippensburg School Study Council recognition of exemplary programs, and we were recognized. Two different groups of us were recognized. First being the MMS Plus program, and that was presented by Mr. Joe Yon. This is Jess Long. She had done some with that. We had an update on that. She was recognized there for her work on that project. Well, and then the facility dog program with Mrs. Jamie Bott kind of stole the show of all the presenters as the dog was there, and it does bring the best out of everybody. She reviewed how our dog program works, things like that. A lot of interest in the other schools. A lot of them were actually on waiting lists to get dogs. Good afternoon. With that, we'll move on to item 5, new business, athletics, recreation, item 5.01. Dr. Lebo.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the fall athletic appointments for the 25-26 school year.
Second.
Second.
Further discussion? Mrs. Swire.
Unless I hear a negative response, I will record the roll call as unanimous vote.
Item 6, new business, budget and finance, item 6.01. Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the treasurer's report as per the attachments, which include the following. Number 1 is the treasurer's report for March 2025. 2 is the board budget report for March 2025. 3, general fund invoices paid 3/12/25 through 4/7/25, checks number 70447 through 70664 in the amount of $954,151.40. Number 4 is the electronic payments in the amount of $8,298,851.55. Number 5 is the general fund invoices payable, check number 70665 through 70683 in the amount of $380,760.06. Number 6 is the capital reserve fund invoices paid, check number 1944 through 1945 in the amount of $12,431.31. Number 7 is the series of 2024 construction fund invoices paid, check number 113 through 122 in the amount of $122,147.18. And lastly, number 8 is the quarterly SAF and TF balance report covering July 2024 through March 2025.
Good. Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Swire.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as unanimous vote.
6.02, Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to acknowledge the merger between Stock and Leader and Saxton and Stump, and appoint Saxton and Stump to serve as our district solicitor for 2024 through 2025 and 2025 through 2026.
And the second.
Second.
Any further discussion?
The 24, 25, and 25, 26 is because of the existing agreement that we had with Stock and Leader.
So this is probably about a month earlier than what we would typically re-up for the next year, but because we had to do the approval to finish out this year, just.
Thank you.
Discussion. Mrs. Swire.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as unanimous vote.
Item 6.03, Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the workers' compensation insurance proposal as per the attachment.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Swiger.
Unless I hear a negative response, I will record the roll call as unanimous vote.
Item 6.04. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the 2025 through 2026 capital area intermediate unit operating budget as per the attachment.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Swiger.
Unless I hear a negative response, I will record the roll call as unanimous vote.
6.05. Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the 2025 through 2026 proposed final general fund budget, making it available for public inspection as presented in the attachment.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I had some questions.
Go ahead.
One was just looking ahead to the potential of a new literacy program and knowing that that might cost some pretty pennies. I was wondering where that falls or where I would see that, where that number would fall.
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's really kind of tied to an accounting question. We can probably talk about the rest of the night.
That's
I'll keep it short.
All right, that's great. That's great.
So in short, you're right, the program is a pricier program, just given the nature of it and in all of our elementary grade levels. It's about $460,000, I would say. But because the investment is such that it's not just a one-year investment, from an accounting perspective, you look at it over a 5-year period of time. And so you kind of prorate the expense in each of the 5 years that are applicable for. And so in this 25-26 budget, we've allocated about $235,000, which represents the portion of expense that will be recognized in 25-26. And then each of the 4 years after that, then we'll continue to budget about $56,000, I would say, in each of the next 4 years. The other piece is in terms of this coming year, $235,000. It's not just a clean $235,000 increase because we also had some curriculum monies in the budget anyway from 24-25, and so we kind of drew up all of those estimates as part of the budget process to say for 25-26, how much do we need to have a curriculum budget for the purchase of the materials that we expect to buy next year.
Go ahead.
I wrote them down, so yeah, thank you for the binder, by the way. It was very helpful. I did look through it and I'm trying to learn. So I noticed that on page 5.7, it lists the costs of staff at $810,977. But on page 1.5, it lists a different number. Is there a reason for the differences in this one?
Yeah, that's a great question too. So that one's probably just a philosophical one, a little bit in terms of what's the net cost of staff additions versus the gross cost of staff additions. And so the higher of the two numbers, the 907,000, is truly the totality of expense that exists for those positions. There's some offsetting revenues for reimbursements because of the 50% for PSERS and FICA. And so the $800,000 number there on that kind of, I'll say ancillary materials, the appendix, if you will, represents kind of the netted down number, the expense net of the reimbursements that we get.
So it's about reimbursements.
Yes. Yes.
And then also student services expenditures on page 1.5 were one number, and then on page 1.1 were a different number there. Similar.
Yeah, so that's a good question. And honestly, it comes down to how we categorize the expense increases in the budget. And so we try to categorize them in buckets to just try to say as a summary, here's what's increased across the budget. The difference is the big chunk, the 500 and I'll say, I think it's like 68,000 or 578.
Yeah, you got it.
Without looking, that one was contracted services. And so that's the placements to out of district placements. That's what Mrs. Bott referred to earlier.
Right.
That always represents frankly the lion's share of the increase in student services. But then the difference between that and then I think it's another $60,000 that's in the executive summary represents other increases in the student services budget. And so said another way, the totality, the higher of the two numbers is everything that increased in student services. But then when you really try to take a deeper dive and say, well, what's the story here? What's causing the underlying increases? The vast majority of it is the placements to out-of-district tuition.
Thank you. So I have a question. This proposed final budget contains the 4.5 real estate tax increase. And I was just wondering if you have any more update to that number, or if you feel like there's any more opportunities to bring that increase down by the time we do the final vote.
Yeah, I would say this is kind of the package of our proposal. It's where we feel comfortable heading into 25-26. It kind of ties a little bit to Mr. Sanker's earlier point about the state budget and kind of where the state is aiming. And from our perspective, we've gone back and looked at a variety of, we've looked at it a variety of ways, I'll say. So like with basic education funding, we said, well, what have we traditionally gotten over the last 3, 4, 5 years? What's in the governor's proposal? We know that the governor's proposal never ever is 100% us getting what he proposes because there's that negotiation. And so ultimately where we strike that balance in terms of state funding is where we feel it's most likely that the state will land. And then as we assemble the rest of the budget, it becomes, what were the totality of proposed staff additions? We did end up feeling less than even what was proposed by our administrators, because ultimately we recognize that when you put the whole budget together and you look at, what are the proposed staff additions? How are we maintaining class sizes? How are we supporting programs? Some mandated things in there. How do we put it all together and then land at a final proposal for the school board? The final piece I'll mention is even in the cost centers and all of the budget proposals that come through those 42 cost centers, we've gone through that with a fine tooth comb as well to say, we've done a filtering of, some of these things might need to be deferred, or some of these things just shouldn't be included in the budget. And so as an administrative team, as a cabinet, working with Dr. Betts and his leadership, which I appreciate very much, we've landed at the final proposal. We've done the filtering of expenses. We've looked at what staff should be included in the budget. We've looked at where the state is probably going to land, or what we view it as probably going to land. And then how do we balance that operating risk, the deficit, with the tax increase that we proposed for. So
I think that's the other piece to add as well, is that it also includes still a little over 2.5 million in planned use of fund balance. So frankly, even if we see something on the plus side with the state budget, it wouldn't necessarily simply help in terms of the tax increase, but 2.5 is even a little bit, it adds a little bit more risk. So if we're able to bring that operating risk down, even on the deficit side, that.
I'm glad Dr. Ritz mentioned that, because I think that's a really good point as well. And I'll build on that 2.5 million is the operating risk that we're willing to use out of our fund balance in any given year. And so anything that good happens to the budget, so we're under maybe in expenses, or maybe we get a little bit extra state revenue, or maybe EIT is a little bit stronger, all of it helps us to cover that $2.5 million gap so that we can get back to break even. Because ultimately that's our goal, is to be in a break even position. And then we measure that with the operating risk and say, we do want to be able to get back to that break even in an ideal year. And that's really always.
And I did want to mention that this is the last year that we have the 1% in there that we've built in over the years for all the new construction.
So we have 25-26 is 1%, and then we have 26-27 is 1%. So we'll have one more year after this.
I thought this was the last.
But to your point, we're close to the end of it, which we started, I think, in either 17, 18, or 19. I'd have to look back and see, but we've been phasing in 1.5% every year since then. So we're near the end of the plan.
I know you're doing your best to tighten all these numbers and give us the best budget of all, but just 4.5 just seems so. It's the highest increase we've ever had.
Yeah, and I would say, as we kind of looked at that and tried to unpack, what were the pressures of influencing this year's budget, I think that, there were a variety of things, but certainly, cost of everything is rising, utilities, and we've highlighted in our presentation some of those pressure points. But I would say also, even as we look at the landscape of other school districts, we see them in higher tax increase percentages as well. And so I think that's another signal that, in general, the school districts are facing a lot of the same challenges, and you can see it come out then in terms of how much of their fund balance are they willing to risk with that operating risk, where they want to go with their tax increases. And so you see, we do a lot of benchmarking, Dr. Bitz and I, Ms. Seeley, and look at what other school districts are doing as well. And I think we're we're kind of in the mix there with what we're seeing from our colleagues.
Greg, I saw, South Middleton had a post-tax of 4.7. Not that I mean, I also don't like when we compare in some respects to other districts because they are so different in how they arrive at that point. But the cases you were making about healthcare costs, that definitely affects that as much. I think there's some areas of similarity that made me, I'm not comfortable with, raising taxes of other people to this, but it's also not, to your point of benchmarking, it's not as though this is, it seems as though this is not out of the realm of where other districts are based on costs of some that are outside of our control. I'll also say that the point of the 1% for our capital or our projects, if you take that out, not that we're taking it out, but setting it aside and thinking about the other parts that with a multi-year plan that is still working, to the point of have you sharpened your pencil and worked on programs and staffing and all that, that's the 3.5%. That does now seem more reasonable because other districts, not just singling out the only one that has been in the paper, but they don't have a 1% component to building projects. So I feel, again, not comfortable, but it seems reasonable where we are based on those things.
I would say probably a fair amount of other schools, without getting into them individually, are not having the two components of the tax increase, I guess, where we're setting some aside for financing and then some for operational. And I think someone made a point at an earlier meeting, which I really liked, was also that ties a little bit to the fact that our high school is funded 100% by the local level because of the moratorium of Plan Con, and the state's not funding school construction. And as a growing district, we grew by 20%, and now we see what was at the lower levels, all of those bigger grades, I'll say, are reaching the high school now. It's one of our bigger high school classes in probably a very long time, maybe ever, I don't know. And so that construction project was funded at 100%. So said another way, that 1% is in some ways a derivative of that as well at the state level. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, a lot of this is rolling downhill from state fair funding, obviously insurance, healthcare, how federal government things like that. So just trying to handle as best we can.
And I think that, sorry, I was gonna say in the inflationary piece as well, I mean, the Act One index is tied to that. So to some degree, and I think somebody mentioned it during the last meeting, the fact that our index is 5, there's to a degree, there's expectation in the system that we may have to go to that level. And thankfully, we don't have to go that high. There were years where we had to meet the index, a lower index, albeit, but there were years that we had to meet the index. Thankfully, we're able to stay below it. So that would be in those.
I think sorry to mention it, sir. I think what you raise is a good point. Like, I think there's a mix of mandated costs in there. There's a mix of the growing school district and supporting our programs in that way to maintain kind of our standard. There's kind of the story also of, as you narrate, kind of what are the pressures in our budget? Where's the state and all that and their funding lawsuit, and the fact that I recognize the state, as Mrs. Bott said, is always lagging behind the data. It's true in the financial world as well. But when you look at the most recent available statewide data, 22-23 school year, we're ranked 457th out of 500 in terms of state funding per pupil. And I would submit that is a big part of the issue as well. And that because there's so much money that's kind of frozen in that whole harmless, and then they've added a couple new formulas along the way to try to equalize things a little bit, which have been a good step, but not taking us to the finish line. That's also part of the issue because we've grown by 20. And I think that's, state revenue probably hasn't kept up on a per pupil basis the way it probably should have. So it puts additional pressure on our budget.
I also look at it as multifactorial, and I know that this, because I went down a rabbit hole this weekend looking at tax increases in school districts and whatnot. An area in New Jersey that I'm very familiar with is, proposing a 9.9% tax increase, and they're literally having multiple special meetings, et cetera, talking about ratios between administrative staff and students, et cetera, which we are always very stellar at. And I also struggle with living in the district and raising taxes, but we're also creating a place where home values are somewhat relative to the desirability of the district. So when we raise these, I can't stand raising taxes. I hate it. But when we do it, our home, I don't know if you've all looked at your home values, but they're going up and they're going up pretty significantly. And it's because we're creating an environment where people want to move into. It's not just a simple, one number, thing. So Tracy, I get what you're saying in terms of this number seems really high. So does the value of my house right now because of our district being so, I don't know. It's not
a goal.
It's not a straight line.
It's not a goal that we want that. It's a lagging indicator of that. Hey, this is, we're doing something right with our overall programming here.
Correct. It's not a linear line. It's more.
I just want all of us to be able to explain to taxpayers, why they're gonna see the highest tax increase so far. So.
Well, and the value of the district too, and how it builds community, all that. It's just a wonderful place to live. So I'm hoping that with the new facilities that are available, that's going to get out to the community. Just, makes it a little bit extra worth it. A little value add. For some districts that don't have the same facilities that we have, so. Hard. I have one more question on tuition, just because I'm new to the budget process. So is that tuition paid to other school districts and vice versa, as far as some of those in this or yeah. So I think you're probably talking about the tuition revenue and the expense, and so there's a couple places where tuition revenue comes from, primarily from our consortium. So we are part of the local consortium in Cumberland County, and we charge back to the students proportional costs for providing those services. But we also, I believe, accept students from outside the consortium, and we get charges for those as well. And so that's to save money on special placement. And it helps us, frankly, if we're running our own program, but then able to accept students from out of the district, and then we proportionally charge whatever the cost of that classroom is cost account. So whatever all the direct costs of that classroom are, the teacher, the aide, Mr. Bingham's office and Mrs. Lott, they have a big spreadsheet that allocates all the costs back out per pupil, and then we bill it out to all the schools and send students.
We try to get as much as we can.
You do a nice job of fairly well. Yeah.
Exactly. Any other questions for Mr. Longwell? He's in his element. Right?
I enjoy accounting finance conversation.
Seeing none, Mrs. Swigert.
Unless I hear a negative response, I will record the roll call as unanimous vote.
Item 8, new business facilities. Item 8.01, Mr. Simon.
I make a motion to approve the Mechanicsburg Middle School masonry repair as presented in the attachment.
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Swigert.
Unless I hear a negative response, I will record the roll call as unanimous vote.
8.02, Mr. Sanger.
I make a motion to approve the replacement playground equipment at Charmanstown as presented in the attachment.
We have a second.
Second,
Further discussion?
Charmanstown spelled wrong, but
I said it right though.
Well, I apologize.
Any discussion? Mrs. Swigert.
Unless I hear a negative response, I will record the roll call as unanimous vote.
Item 9, new business, personnel, 9.01, Mr. Bradley.
I'd ask the board to approve the personnel report as per the attachments.
Second.
Second.
Further discussion? Mrs. Swigert.
Unless I hear a negative response, I will record the roll call as unanimous vote.
Item 9.02, Mr. Bradley.
I'd ask the board to authorize the district to conduct a PSBA salary study for evaluation of the district's compensation plans.
We have a second.
Second.
Further discussion? Mrs. Swiger.
Unless I hear a negative response, I will record the roll call as unanimous vote.
Item 12, hearing of visitors. We have reached the second opportunity for public comment. This opportunity is reserved for comments on issues not listed on the agenda not being voted upon this evening. As a reminder, public comment is limited to residents and taxpayers of the school district. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per individual and requires community members to observe a reasonable decorum. If you'd like to address the board, please come up to the podium, share your name and municipality in which you reside. Sally.
Good evening. That was a long meeting I picked, but I did enjoy being here with the athletes. So, in fact, I'm here to talk about athletics. My name's Sally Holbert. I reside at 424 West Main Street in Mechanicsburg. Those of you that don't know me, I'm a parent of 4 children that went through Mechanicsburg School District. They're all graduated, all went to college, now are onto their career path, and they all participated in sports. And that was a big part of their schooling and their just personality development. And we enjoyed that. My daughter, the smallest of my 4 children, is a professional athlete. Now, I was here perhaps a year ago, and I addressed some of you that were on the board, and I'm here to address you again on that same issue. And I posed the question about transgendered athletes and what was the school's policy, specifically boys participating in women's or girls' sports. And I think you all looked at each other. Do we have a policy? I don't know that we have a policy. I'm here, and I'm assuming that there is no policy. I did look at the website, and there is something that I want to mention that kind of raised a concern with me with what is on the school district's website regarding Title IX information. You have a door open for males to compete against females. I said it before, and I'll say it again. I'm here to ask your support to be proactive. And this time, a year has passed, make an effort to look at taking action and developing a policy. Be proactive. Don't wait for somebody else to develop a policy. And I'm going to give you a couple of tools that you can use right now because it is current. So your support in protecting girls and women's sports in our schools by implementing policy that states that athletic teams or sports designated for females, women, or girls may not be open to students of the male sex, even those male students that identify as females. Now let's go to Title IX information on your website. You have a statement there. I won't read the whole thing and because of my time limit, but you have inserted the words sexual orientation right in Title IX. So I would encourage you all to look at that statement and then rethink that and then think about what I'm asking for, which is support. It's not safe. There was a couple examples where a recent athlete took the knee because she would not fence a male transgendered person in her event. I want to bring to your attention really quick, if you didn't follow legislation, Senate Bill number 9 just passed out of the House Education Committee or the Senate Education Committee. It has good wording in there, and that is the bill that was titled Fairness in Women's Sports Act that is going through our legislature. So that's a good one to look at. Look at what the LPGA just did. January in 2025, they will no longer allow transgender males to compete with girls and women in pro golf. It is unfair. There's a lot of detail about why it's unfair, and the hormones that they take do not make a difference. So I think it's a big safety issue, and I appreciate it if this board would look into it seriously this time and not wait another year. And I don't know that anybody had followed up, but I would like to know what happened next. How do we get some energy, some interest in this issue? And it's a significant issue.
Thank you. Any other comment, public comment on items that were not on the agenda and not voted upon? Seeing none, item 13, Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second. Meeting is adjourned.